Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Anay Gupta and I'm so glad to have you here today. This is episode 2 of Mastering IGCSE Economics. In episode 1, we discussed chapter 1, that was the basic economic problem. And today, we're going to talk about chapter 2, factors of production. Okay, so we spoke about the basic economic problem, and although that may have implications in various different contexts, as was the examples that I gave to you in the last video, we are going to be talking about the fundamental idea of it. Cut, restart. Okay, we spoke about the basic economic problem in the last video, and that was unlimited wants but limited resources. And although this equation was explained in different contexts by me in the last video, it generally talks about production and manufacturing purposes. Okay, but today we are going to understand what exactly are these resources, right? What exactly are these factors of production that allow me to produce a particular good or service? Okay, which is another term for these resources. Now, factors of production, or I could say FOP for short, can be classified or into four different types. Okay, land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Land refers to the natural resources. Now, I know that in conventional sense, land would just mean the land, or the earth, the soil, the terrain. But in economics, land comprises of all the natural resources, right? So from the trees to the fish to the coal, right? All the natural resources come under land. Labor is equivalent to human effort. Okay, human effort as in the effort that humans put in themselves. It is not that, okay, I am building a machine and the machine is working, so it's ultimately my effort. No, if I am directly using my hands and my feet to do something, then that counts as labor, that counts as human effort. Okay, so all the mental and physical effort that I'm doing in producing something comes under labor. Capital is the human made goods. Okay, human made resources or goods used for production. Now this is a key word here, used for production. I'll get to it later. And enterprise sorry, enterprise is the risk bearing and decision making in the business. So it's basically the presence of the entrepreneur of or the businessman, right? Because without the businessman, without the CEO, the company or the firm cannot really produce. And because we say it's enterprise, because even if it's a government produced product, there is still someone who is risking the tax revenue, because there is always some place else that we can devote these factors of production. So there's someone who's making this decision, risking that cost, and producing this particular product. So that is the factor of enterprise. Okay, we're going to discuss a few things about each factor of production in detail. First up is mobility. Okay, and under mobility we have two types: occupational, which means can the factor of production be used in another occupation or to produce a different product or service. Okay, so that is what occupational mobility means. And geographical mobility. So geographical mobility is can the factor of production be moved from one place to another. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. Alongside that, we're also going to talk about the quality and quantity. So how can that of the factor of production be changed in the real world? And we're going to talk about the payments to the factors of production. Right? So that is what we are going to be discussing in this entire chapter. Okay, now first up we have land. And remember, guys, in economics, there is no such thing as right or wrong. If you can make a statement and support it with sufficient evidence, reasoning, or examples, then you will get marks for your statement, even if it's not in the mark scheme and even if it's beyond the scope of the syllabus. So, all you have to do is just think logically and write with examples. Okay, so if you're talking about the mobility of land, okay, let's first take the occupational mobility of land. Mobility. So land would generally be occupationally mobile, right? For example, a particular piece of terrain, right, it could be used for agriculture. The same piece of land could be used for say building houses, so housing, right? The same piece of land could be used to make industries or factories, right? So in manufacturing, I could say. So there are n number of uses for the same piece of land. So land in its traditional sense should be occupationally mobile. Now, geographically, come on guys, you can use common sense and say land is geographically immobile, because if a piece of land exists in one place, if I have some land in India, I cannot take that land and put it in say Australia or put it in the US, right? That particular soil, that particular field, that particular forest stays there. However, you can think out of the box and say that that land comprises of all natural resources, which means I can take say a zebra from Africa and bring it to India, or I could say that fish or birds can migrate, which means that these animals are geographically mobile. So there is some geographical mobility as well, if you think of it this way. So it all depends on the perspectives that you can put forth in front of the examiner. Now, what about the quality and quantity of land? Okay, let's talk about quality first. So the quality of land can be improved, can be degraded, and now over here you just have to think logically. Okay, let's just assume that there is a farm, there is a piece of field, there is some land, and why would the quality of that soil or that land or a natural resource become better? So for example, I could use fertilizers, right? So fertilizers will improve the quality of land. Now, for example, if there is a natural calamity, say for example a flood that will destroy the soil, that will destroy the crops, that will decrease the quality of land, right? Now, if for example there is a nice drainage system, that will again increase my quality of land, that will increase the quality of my yield, right? Now, again, if there is some disease outbreak, okay, I could say, right, then that will that will like weaken the animals or and reduce the health of these animals, and hence reduce the quality of land. So you just have to think of various factors that could deteriorate the quality or improve the quality of land. And if you get an example saying that discuss whether the quality of land is expected to improve, you just have to pick out these positive points, these negative points, and put them under hypothetical situations, and that's your answer. Now, similarly, if we talk about the quantity of land, that's the same thing you have to do, right? The quantity of actual like terrain is unchanged. So quantity of the earth or the size of the earth is unchanged. But we can talk about things like global warming. So that is increasing the amount of water, but it is decreasing the amount of ice that's available, fresh ice that's available, right? Now I can talk about animals. So animals go up and down in number all the time. So you can just, if you're taking biology, you can utilize that knowledge, or you can just say that okay, the fish was predated more, or there was a disease among fishes, there was this problem, that problem, and then you say why the quantity or quality, a quantity of animals might increase or decrease, right? So what you have to do is basically identify which side do you have more points to write to, and then these points like animals, they are actually double-sided points, which means that you can say that the quantity of animals is increasing as well as decreasing, right? Based on the situation you put it, you could say there's a disease, so the quantity decreased. You could say that there was more food available to them, so the quantity increased, right? So whatever you can say, you can make it double sided. Again, floods, so I could say natural calamities may destroy crops, that may decrease the quality of land as well. Fossil fuel, so I could say that the amount of the animals or plants that are dying might change, or the conditions might not be suitable for fossilization, so for formation of fossils may increase or decrease, right? And these examples are not really in the textbooks, but you could just kind of work your brain on natural resources and why some natural resources might increase or decrease over time, right? But generally the quantity of the natural resources is balanced overall, and it does not really change a lot significantly over time. Okay, so that is the quality and quantity of land. Now, for any piece of land that you own, the payment is rent. So if I'm buying land, or if I'm staying on a particular piece of land, then I will pay rent to the owner of the land. Okay, I will only not pay rent if I am both the owner as well as the occupier of the land. Then I'll pay rent to myself, which technically does not make sense. Okay, so payment to land is rent. Now let's move forward and let's talk about labor. Land was pretty straightforward, but let's get to labor now. Sorry. If we're talking about mobility, now here is the catch. For labor, mobility is influenced by a variety of factors. And if they're asking you to explain or analyze why the labor mobility might have increased or decreased over time, you can use these same factors and tailor them as per the situations. Okay, so let's first see the factors and then I'll tell you how to tailor them. So, for say occupational mobility, okay, occupational mobility. Why will a particular worker, if he's working as say an IT professional, can he work as a farmer as well? Okay, or can he not work as a farmer? So what are the obstacles that he may face, or what are the reasons why he will be able to work as another job very smoothly and very efficiently as well. So the first problem that he might face is lack of information. So if we have a farmer, he might not be aware of an IT job because he'll be aware of jobs in his industry. He won't really have information about other industries. Okay. The second problem that he might face is lack of skills. So he might not know how to work with computers because he is trained to work, in the farm, in the field. So he's trained about all the farming practices, but he does not know how to code. Okay. The third problem could be lack of qualifications. Okay, and say fourth problem could be need of upgradations, which is kind of repetitive to the lack of skills. That means that you cannot perform that function efficiently. Even if you can, you might not be hired or you might not be able to work because you don't have a degree. For example, I can perform as surgery absolutely perfectly, but if I'm not a certified doctor, then I am not allowed to perform that particular surgery. So to attain that qualification, I need to spend 10 years of 12 years studying that subject, which I might not be able to do under these circumstances. So lack of qualifications means I cannot switch professions in certain fields. Okay, so these are some problems. Now, if for example you get a question that the labor mobility, occupational mobility has improved in XYZ country, analyze why this increase might have happened. So what you have to do is you have to turn these points around. Okay, so lack of information becomes more information. So how is there more information? That means there can be government awareness campaigns, right? There could be more better education or widespread internet, outreach of internet opportunities, better advertisements, advertising of opportunities. So that can help in spreading the information to more and more people. If there's problem of lack of skills, then there can be education, in better quality of education. There can be retraining opportunities like crash courses. If there's a problem of qualifications, then you could probably reduce the time it takes to attain degrees. From a 4-year course, you make it a 2-year course, so more people will be willing to take that course, right? So all of these schemes or solutions could be implemented to increase occupational mobility. So you have the factors that is the problem. Now you just need to turn it. If you want to make it good, you write the solutions. If you want to make it sound bad, you write the problem. That lack of information because or lack of skills because education is bad, but better skills because education and retraining opportunities are good. So you just have to twist them in that sense, whether you want to have a positive connotation or a negative connotation. Okay, now let's work with the geographical mobility, and you follow the same process for all of these factors. Now let's understand some obstacles that a particular worker, if he wants to move from one country to another, if he wants to relocate, what are the problems that he might face. So, first thing, the first problem that he might face is problems with family. So, he might not want to leave his family. Okay. The second problem that he could face is visa restrictions. There may be housing difficulties. So let's say that the housing over there could be too expensive, or the houses over there could be a little too small, and the person is used to living in bigger houses. So he does not want to downsize his, quality of life because of his house. Then the problem could be education. If he has children, then the children's education, does not permit him to relocate because there may be language barriers. That might be a problem. If I am, say, if I can only speak English and you ask me to move to Spain, and I cannot speak Spanish, I cannot work in a job in Spain, right? Another problem could be the climate. I cannot live in a very cold climate, so I do not want to go there. Okay, there can be lack of information. I don't know that a job opportunity exists in Spain, so how am I going to apply for the job and get that job? Right? So there can be n number of reasons why person might not want to move. So usually we say that labor is geographically immobile and occupationally immobile. Okay, but there can be cases, or there can be arguments that labor is geographically mobile. Why? Because if, let's say, that visa restrictions are uplifted, okay, let's say that the person is not married and has no immediate family, so does not have a burden of family. Okay, there are more opportunities, there are more connections, and there is more information that's spread. Language, let's say that there is an opportunity, or the company sponsors a course, or a language crash course, or we could say that there is a rise of a universal language. So that means that more and more people are speaking English. So even if I'm going to Spain, I am not required to learn Spanish because people at my job speak English. For example, if you are working in India, you do not need to really know Hindi very fluently to converse in a professional situation, because people are using more and more English to talk in professional environments as well, right? So the language barrier is breaking down gradually. So these situations, if they arise, they will reduce these problems and make labor more geographically mobile. Okay, now let's talk about the quality and quantity of labor. So let's talk about the quality first. So quality of labor, that has to do with the efficiency, with the productivity, and also the quality of output that the labor will produce. So if there is a good education, so how well is the education system? Okay, so does he have enough skills to produce quality output? Is there Are there good working conditions? Okay, because if he's happy, if he is mentally healthy, only then can a particular worker be able to produce good output. Are there Is there good healthcare opportunities? So is the worker healthy, right? How is the income level, and a lot of living factors available, but generally this should entail your quality of labor. And if we speak about the quantity of labor, then we can talk about the population. So how many people are actually present on the earth? We can speak about the age of the population. So are there too many old people, or are there too many kids who can't work, or are there people in the working age group. So if there are people like say 16 to 60, they can actually work and contribute to the labor. Then we can also talk about the number of working hours, and because that also contributes to how much a person works. And we can speak about the holidays as well. We can speak about the retirement age, and I can also speak about employable age. That means at what age can a child start working legally. Then I can speak about attitudes to working women. So are women socially, encouraged to work, or are they looked down upon in, working environments? So that at social attitude. I could also speak about the attitudes to, you know, these specially abled people. So how are they treated in the workplace? So that all of that really influences how many people join the labor force, how many people, actually work, and how long they work. So these are the factors that could affect the quantity of labor. Again, you could sway them both ways depending on the connotations you would like to give to all of these factors. And the payment for labor is wages. Wages. Okay, so that is your entire, you know factor of production of labor. Now, moving forward to the next factor, that is capital. Capital is uh, capital is a human made good that is used in factor of production. Now, the first thing that I want to clarify is the difference between a capital good and a consumer good. Now, I know you're hearing these terms for the first time, but what is the difference? Now, a capital good is a good used to produce other goods. Consumer good is the good purchased for household pleasure or satisfaction. So, which means that this good is like allowing it me to produce more goods, but this consumer good is the end product. Okay, so a capital good example could be a machine. Okay, it could be a factory, an office, a tool, anything like that. And consumer good would be the end product. So everything from a book to a chocolate would be a consumer good. Now, this also depends. Okay, if the book is being used to maintain records or something, right? So that means that it is being used in the production of something. Maintain, I could say, firm records in the production process, right? But if that same book is being used by you to study, then that's like an end product. So in this case, in the first case, it would be a capital good, and in the second case, it would be a consumer good. So you just have to identify the purpose of that good, and that is how you can distinguish if it's a capital good or a consumer good. Okay, over here we are only going to focus on capital goods. Now, capital goods, let's talk about their mobility. Okay, so if I have a machine from one place, I will obviously be able to transport it to another place. So capital goods are geographically mobile. So capital is geographically mobile, because I can transport goods from one place to another. Now, you could argue that if there's a factory in some place, I cannot really take that factory from one place to another, and that makes it geographically immobile. Yes, you are correct at that point as well. So, it's all about perspectives, as I said. Occupational mobility, capital is occupationally mobile as well. Okay, so capital, if for example, I would say an office is being used for a tech firm, it could very likely be used as a call center as well. So capital is usually occupationally mobile. Now, if for example there is a very specific machine, okay, if there's a specific machine, then yes, that will be occupationally immobile because it is designed to, do a specific function, and it cannot do another function because it's not been programmed to do that. So yeah, that machine would be occupationally immobile. So, guys, the key idea why I'm doing so much in depth and giving you so many examples is because that's how you train your mind to think. Okay, if you are using the conventional method of just opening up your textbook, reading up, and just accepting the fact that okay, capital is geographically mobile, it is occupationally mobile, then that's not gonna help. You need to, just give your mind that squeeze, give your mind that exercise, and try to find alternative arguments, try to find counter arguments, and see that okay, this might not be the case, there might be this situation, that situation, and find hypothetical situations and try to interlink them with your concepts that you're learning. So really think in a very practical way about what are the different scenarios that may arise, and relate them back to the definition of capital goods, that are they are human made goods used to produce other goods and services, right? And that's what we did. So for example, even with the land thing, we ensured that land was referred to as natural resources, and we did not think of them as the traditional earth or the space of land, because if we did that, then we would not have been able to think about its geographical mobility in the sense of animals. So just try to think out of the box, and that's how you'll be able to develop your answers in exams as well. Okay, now let's talk about the quality of capital. So, capital's quality really depends on the advances in technology, in the research and development. So how much research is going on? Are there new methods that have come up? Are there new machines that have been invented? Are there new methods of production that have been developed? So all of this research really influences the quality of capital in the sense of machines. But again, you could speak about them in very different aspects if you cite the examples of what capital good you are referring to. Now, if we speak about the quantity of capitals, here's where a lot of masala can come in. So, quantity of capital is heavily influenced by investment, or how much money is spent new capital goods. Now, over time, we need to understand that there is something called as depreciation. Now, what is depreciation? Depreciation is basically the loss due to wear and tear of capital goods. So, if for example, I am buying a mobile phone, okay, for company purposes, for not as a consumer good, but as a capital good, okay, or I'm buying say a computer. Now, over time, the parts will start to say just jam up. It will start to work a little slowly. and until it reaches a point where it is not functioning properly anymore. Okay, if there's a machine, it can start to rust, it can start to, have programming errors, it can start to slow down. So all of that wear and tear that happens of those capital goods is called as depreciation, and you have to replace that depreciation with investment in buying newer capital goods. So if a phone eventually, wears out, you have to buy a new phone, and that's what is your investment. So that is what influences the quantity of capital on a large scale. Now you can also think of capital from a different perspective. So I can think of the supply of capital goods. Okay, so I know my capital will be influenced by how much capital I can buy, but it will also be influenced by how much capital goods there are in total. So, for example, if only 20 machines are produced, I cannot buy 30 machines, right? So that will also depend on the supply of capital goods. So you have to think of them in different ways. Now, if there's an advancement in technology, so some capital goods will become outdated. That means that even if they exist, okay, now for example, I have a computer and there's this new computer that has come in the market which with extraordinary features, and I buy that computer and I'm now using the other computer to work. So even though this existing computer is still working, is still with me, I am not really using that to produce any more goods, and so now it's just like a piece of junk that's lying around in my storage. That means that it is not really a capital good anymore because it's not being used to produce more goods, right? Capital is basically a good that will produce more goods, and if it's just lying around and I'm not using it, then it is no longer a capital good, right? So that is also what something that you can think of. So it's all these different angles that you can think of when you're referring to quantity of capital. Now the payment to capital is interest. Now, the best way to think of capital is a loan. Okay, so for example, if I loan or if I, take your machine with me for usage, then I pay interest on that machine until when I return it back. If I'm taking your money, right, money is also a form of capital. So if I'm taking your money to say buy a house, then I will pay interest on your capital, on your money, and I will repay that to you, right? So capital earns interest. Okay, a very simple concept, and that over here there is no real way need to complicate this concept. Okay, last factor of production, and that is enterprise. Okay. Enterprise is basically that entrepreneurial mindset, that risk taking, and the decision making in business. So, is an enterprise occupationally mobile? Yes, should be. Should be. Because if I am able to succeed well in a tech business, I might be able to use that, because over here it's all about business acumen, right? So I might have, I could say, business acumen to succeed well in another business like a D2C business, like a product business. So, or I might be able to succeed in a fast food business. So if it's really the risk taking and the business acumen that we're talking about, then yes, enterprise will be occupationally mobile, and that is why we see investors really have a range of portfolios, and then they take advisory shares and they give advice to different industries and different firms operating in these different industries. But there's a problem that they may not have the technical knowledge or knowledge of their consumers. So if I know how a fast food industry consumer thinks, I have total knowledge of how a fast food business works, but I have no knowledge of how a computer works, how coding works, then I will not be able to succeed in a coding business, right? So that is what may not make enterprise so occupationally mobile. Now it's up to you how you present your argument. Now, on the other hand, if I'm talking about geographical mobility, then we have the exact same argument. So, enterprise should be geographically mobile, right? And that is why we see these businessmen expanding, right? If I have a plant in India, if I am selling in India, I will become an MNC and I will also sell in the US. I will also sell in Europe, right? That is what geographical mobility means, because if my business acumen works in India, it works in the US and it works everywhere in the world. You can take my acumen anywhere, right? But the problem here is that consumers are different. So if the Indian market, if the Indian households think in a particular way, the French households may think in a different way, and so there may be lack of knowledge of consumers, which may hamper the mobility of enterprise. But if I study the market for some time over there, there is a high chance that I will be able to do well in the other country as well. Right? So generally, enterprise should be occupationally and geographically mobile. But you can argue otherwise as well. Let's talk about the quality and quantity of enterprise. So if we're talking about the quality of enterprise, then we need to take into account the, you know, ability or the leadership abilities. Sorry. Then we also need to be able to understand how risk taking, how a big a risk taker the entrepreneur is. If he is willing to take risks, only then he becomes a good entrepreneur, right? His decision making skills, his negotiation or communication skills, right? And basically we need to talk about the education and skills of an entrepreneur, right? That is what we want to talk here when we're speaking about the quality of entrepreneurs. On the other hand, if we are speaking about quantity, sorry, if we're speaking about quantity, then first we need to understand the social system, right? The is entrepreneurship really encouraged? Is there, because if you notice recently in India, there is a wave of startups. There's a boom, which means there's a craze for everyone to start, their own business. They don't want to work under people, and that social system really promotes enterprise, right? But there may be some where people are not really encouraged to take risks on their own, and they're not encouraged to basically be entrepreneurs. So that is what is also important. Then secondly, that if we're talking from a financial standpoint, then taxes, right? If the taxes are very high, people may think that the profits will be a little less, and they may not be very motivated to start their own business, right? Because at the end of the day, people want profits, and taxes will reduce profits. Then after that, government regulations. So if there are n number of restrictions and policies and compliances, then not only will the compliance costs increase, the compliance costs will increase, and the production, would there will be less of innovation in production. And that is basically like, a demotivating factor if there are too many regulations I need to adhere to. After that, there's also, the number of immigrants. For instance, people migrating from India to the US, becoming CEOs over there, starting their own businesses over there. So if more people are coming into your country, that will increase demand firstly, and it will increase the population, of which number of entrepreneurs may increase. Okay, now after that, let's talk about the privatization opportunities. Now, if you're studying this chapter for the first time, you don't know what privatization is, don't worry, I'll tell you what that is. Privatization is when government sells off some part of, some industry to the private sector. So, for example, energy now, if you see Adani, that is what is happening, right? It is being run by the private sector, which could have been run by the public sector. Okay, the airline industry, for example, the government privatized the airline industry when it sold it back to Tata, when it sold Air India back to Tata. So that is what is happening with privatization, where government sells a particular industry to, entrepreneurs, and that opens up more opportunities for entrepreneurs to enter into the market. Okay, and we also have the education and training opportunities. So if I am trained to be an entrepreneur, if I have a better education, so for example, courses like, MBA, courses like a BBA, so these opportunities are really training students in business management, and that allows them to possess the skills, both the soft skills and the knowledge and the hard skills to become an entrepreneur. So skills like marketing, skills like communication, they will possess those skills better, and that will make them confident of becoming an entrepreneur themselves, right? So these are some factors that can affect the quantity of enterprise. Now, if you just open a textbook, or if you just open a random study material, you may see these points at the start. But the correct way to study this chapter, or any chapter in economics, is to think beyond. Okay, there are government regulations, so what? Every time you ask yourself this question, so what? Why will labor be encouraged or discouraged, right? So number of immigrants increases, so what? Population increases, and out of that increased population, there will be a greater number of entrepreneurs, right? So that is how you have to describe this equation, or describe these relationships. Okay, now the payment to enterprise will be profit, right? That is what the payment to enterprise will be. They will earn profit, that will be the revenue minus cost. We will do that all in the later chapters as well. Okay, now if you are doing this chapter for the first time and there are a few economic terms that you do not understand, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments below, and I will clarify them. I have tried to do that as far as possible. However, the key aim of this video was to serve as a quick revision. If you're doing stage 3, that is, crammed compilation, and if you're just trying to compile everything into a string of notes, then this stage, or this video, will be really helpful for you, because I have tried to analyze every aspect of this chapter into as much depth as possible, with as many examples as possible. So over here in economics, what you want to do is not just stick to the textbook, but also try to think off the top of your head and find more relationships, more examples that you can relate to each other. Okay, so that was all about factors of production if you enjoyed this video, if you found it useful and informative, please make sure to hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel and share it with as many people as possible. If you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Bye bye.
चल उठ जा, let's crack it, जोर दे लगा, let's crack it, भीड़ को छोड़ दे, let's crack it.